A mother of two disappears on a morning jog, leaving behind her phone, headphones, and a trail of lies. It was a cold November morning in Redding, California. The kind of quiet, ordinary day where nothing bad ever happens. Birds in the oak trees, the sound of wind brushing against the leaves, and a 34-year-old woman named Sherri Papini heading out for a daily jog. She waves goodbye to her kids, kisses her husband, and disappears into the calm of the suburban trails. But that calm wouldn't last, because a few hours later, Sherri was gone. Her phone was found lying on the ground, screen cracked, earbuds tangled in strands of blonde hair. Her husband, Keith, called and texted again and again. No answer. He drove the jogging route himself, heart pounding, scanning every corner. Still nothing. By evening, panic spread. Sherri wasn't the type to just vanish. She adored her children. She kept a routine. Something was very wrong. Keith called 911, his voice shaking as he told police his wife never came home. Within hours, helicopters hovered above the tree lines. Search dogs combed through brush, and volunteers flooded the area with flashlights and posters. Local news picked it up first. California mom vanishes on morning run. Then, national media caught the scent. Within days, the entire country knew her name. The picture of a smiling, blonde young mother filled TV screens, social media feeds, and news alerts. The narrative was clear. A perfect mom, abducted by strangers in a small, safe town. Theories erupted online. Some blamed human traffickers. Others thought it was random violence. There was fear, empathy, and outrage. How could someone just disappear in broad daylight in a place like Redding? Keith appeared on camera days later, pale and broken, begging for her return. His voice cracked as he said, "Bring my wife home. My kids need their mom." His pain felt raw. The nation rallied behind him. Strangers mailed donations, volunteers organized vigils, and the FBI joined the case. Weeks passed. No suspects, no leads. Hustilenzi until one freezing dawn. 22 days later, a call came in. A motorist had spotted a woman on a deserted highway, battered, bruised, and chained. It was Sherri Papini, and her story would shock the entire world. For 3 weeks, America searched for her, but the truth was darker than anyone imagined. What really happened during those missing days? Was Sherri a victim, or something else entirely? Reading, California, the kind of quiet, sun-soaked town where neighbors still wave from their driveways. Kids ride bikes after school, and people leave their doors unlocked without a second thought. It's the kind of place where nothing truly bad ever happens. Or so everyone thought. On the morning of November 2nd, 2016, Sherri Papini laced up her running shoes like she did almost every day. Her husband, Keith, had already left for work. Their 2 children were at daycare. The air was crisp, 52 degrees, sky clear, the kind of peaceful morning joggers love. Sherri texted Keith a simple good morning before heading out. That would be the last message she'd ever received from her phone while she was still safe. Hours passed. The afternoon, Keith returned home, expecting to see her car in the driveway. The sound of cartoons in the living room, maybe the smell of dinner starting, but the house was still. Empty. Her keys were gone. But her car was there. At first, he didn't panic. Maybe she'd stopped by a friend's place. Maybe a longer run. But as the sun started to sink, Una se crept in. He called her. No answer. It texted again. Still nothing. Then came the call that changed everything. A loco found an iPhone lying on the side of Old Oregon Trail Road, Sherri's usual jogging route. The earbuds were still connected, twisted, with strands of long blonde hair tangled in them. The screen was cracked. Keith rushed there, heart pounding. When he arrived, he recognized the phone instantly. "That's Sherri's," he said to police, voice trembling. Something's wrong. She'd never just drop it. From that moment, the search for Sherri Papini became one of the most intense missing person cases California had ever seen. By nightfall, search teams fanned out across the woods, combing through miles of trails. Volunteers carried flashlights. Deputies marked off perimeters with yellow tape. Helicopters swept the skies, and as word spread, hundreds joined the effort. Neighbors, friends, even strangers. The next morning, Sherri's face was everywhere. Posters with her photos smiling, blonde, blue-eyed, hung from lampposts, store windows, and gas stations. Missing Sherri Papini, last seen wearing a pink running jacket. News vans lined the roads, reporters broadcasting live. A mother of two, gone without a trace. Keith Papini stood outside his home, shaking, pleading for help. "I just want my wife back," he told cameras, his voice cracking mid-sentence. "She's a wonderful mom, please. If anyone knows anything, please." Every major network picked it up. The story was perfect for headlines. Young mother, small town, mystery disappearance. The community's heart broke collectively. People brought candles, sent money, and prayed at vigils. Police quickly launched a full-scale investigation. They canvassed the entire jogging route, interviewing residents, reviewing surveillance footage, checking security cameras from nearby houses. But there was nothing, no car seen stopping, no struggle recorded, no witnesses at all. For investigators, it was a nightmare scenario. A woman had seemingly vanished into thin air. As the days stretched into weeks, speculation grew wild. Some thought it was human trafficking, readying was near major highways, and the story fit the pattern of abductions. Others suspected random violence, but none of it explained the eerie lack of clues. Meanwhile, Keith was unraveling. In one emotional interview, he said, "It's like she just disappeared off the face of the earth. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I just need her home." His raw grief pulled the nation in even deeper. Online, amateur detectives pored over every detail. Some posted maps, tracing her route. Others analyzed photos, body language and time. The internet turned into an open investigation. Everyone wanted answers. The FBI joined the case, calling it a top priority. They released a statement. "We believe Sherri Papini was abducted and is in danger." Weeks went by. Leads came and went. A few suspicious vehicles, a possible sighting 2 towns over, a stranger seen talking to a jogger, but all turned cold. By the 3rd week, hope was fading. Even Keith admitted, in a quiet moment, on camera, "I don't know if she's still alive." Then, just when the world was beginning to grieve, everything changed. 22 days after Sherri vanished, a call came to dispatch early in the morning. "There's a woman walking on the highway. She looks injured. She says she's been kidnapped." When police arrived, typhooned, her bruised, bloody, covered in dirt, with a chain around her waist and a brand burned into her shoulder. It was Sherri Papini. The story that had begun as a nightmare had turned into a miracle, or so everyone thought. Before she became the center of one of the strangest cases in modern crime history, Sherri Papini was the picture of a perfect suburban life. She grew up in Redding, the same small California town where she'd later vanish. Friends remembered her as bubbly, athletic, and always smiling. A small-town girl who loved running, family barbecues, and taking care of people. In 2009, she married Keith Papini, a quiet, kind man who worked at a local electronics company. Together, they built a life that looked almost picture-perfect. 2 kids, a cozy home surrounded by pine trees, and a love story straight out of a Hallmark movie. Her social media told the story of happiness, photos of family hikes, handwritten notes for Keith, birthday cakes, and Christmas mornings with matching pajamas. She even posted about how blessed she felt to be a wife and mother. To anyone looking in from the outside, she was exactly who people wanted to be. The mom next door, the friend who had it all together. But behind that filtered perfection, a different story was quietly forming. Those close to her started noticing small things, dramatic mood swings, sudden bursts of anger, moments where she'd disappear for hours without saying where she was. She sometimes argued with friends over small misunderstandings, and once an ex-boyfriend had mentioned that Sherri liked attention a little too much. Still, no one could have imagined anything darker. After all, Everyone has flaws. Keith adored her. He worked long hours, but always came home to her smile and their 2 kids waiting at the door. In interviews later, he'd say, "She was my best friend, my soulmate." But Sherri wanted more. She loved attention, not just from her husband, but from the world around her. Compliments, sympathy, admiration. They seemed to feed her in a way nothing else could. When she went jogging, she didn't just run for exercise. She'd post about it, share routes, and talk about her discipline. When she volunteered at her kids' school, she'd mention it online with humbled captions that still shined a light on her. She wasn't a bad person, but she craved being noticed. In the months before her disappearance, those around her would later recall subtle tension. Keith said she'd seemed more anxious, more emotional. She talked about stress, feeling unsafe, feeling like people didn't appreciate her enough. She once even told a friend she was scared of being followed, but couldn't he say by who. And then, on November 2nd, 2016, she disappeared. For the next 3 weeks, that image of her, the sweet mom, the devoted wife, the victim, became the face of a national mystery. The perfect woman everyone wanted to rescue. Even celebrities and talk shows picked it up. Hashtags spread online. Hashtag bring Sherri home. People shared her photo, begged for leads, sent donations to the family. She was America's missing mother, but as investigators dug deeper after her miraculous return, something about her story didn't sit right. Her injuries looked real, bruises, burns, her weight down, almost 15 pounds. But when detectives asked her to describe her kidnappers, the details sounded oddly scripted. She said she'd been abducted by 2 Hispanic women wearing masks, armed with a gun, speaking mostly Spanish. She said they cut her hair, beat her, and branded her shoulder before letting her go. It was terrifying. Tragic, but it also didn't make sense. There were no witnesses, no matching vehicles, no ransom note, and despite FBI efforts, not a single trace of the supposed kidnappers was ever found. Still, the country believed her. Why wouldn't they? She looked like a victim, fragile, pale, emotional. She cried on camera. She clung to Keith in public. The narrative was set. The miracle mom, who survived 22 days in captivity. But the truth, the real story was far darker than anyone could have guessed. Because while the world was praying for justice, the FBI was starting to suspect that maybe, just maybe, Sherri Papini hadn't been kidnapped at all. It was 4:30 a.m. on November 24th, 2016. A driver heading down a rural highway near Yolo County, California, slammed on his brakes. There on the side of the road was a woman stumbling out of the darkness, long blonde hair tangled, bruises covering her body, and a chain hanging loosely from her wrist. She was crying, shaking, barely able to stand. It was Sherri Papini, missing for 22 days. The country woke up to breaking news. She's alive. The kidnapped California mom found. For weeks, America had followed her story. The jogger who vanished. The heartbroken husband begging for her return. The children asking where mommy was. Now, she was back. Police rushed her to the hospital. Her body told a horrifying story. Her weight had dropped drastically. Her hair was unevenly cut, and a brand mark burned into her right shoulder. Doctors said she was dehydrated and traumatized. Investigators recorded every detail she shared. Sherri said to women, both Hispanic, one older, one younger, had abducted her at gunpoint. She claimed they'd kept her chained in a small room, covered her face with a bag, and fed her barely anything. She said she didn't know where she was held. She only remembered hearing Spanish voices in a TV playing somewhere in the distance. And then, out of nowhere, they released her. They dropped her off on the side of a desolate highway and drove away. It sounded like something out of a horror film. The public reaction was immediate. News outlets ran to for Arcoberaje. Reporters camped outside her home. True crime forums exploded with theories. Drug trafficking, human slavery, mistaken identity. And at the center of it all was Sherri, the survivor. Her husband, Keith, couldn't hold back tears during interviews. He described the moment he got the call. They found her alive. I just dropped to my knees. He told reporters how their children clung to their mom when she returned home. They didn't want to let go of her. he said. It was the emotional ending. Everyone wanted the miracle mom reunited with her family just before Thanksgiving. But for detectives, something didn't sit right. When Sherri spoke about her kidnappers, her details were vague. Their hair color, their clothes, the place she was held. Everything seemed to blur together. She cried, paused, said she couldn't remember. Her story was heartbreaking. Yes, but it was also strangely perfect. Investigators searched for the suspects tirelessly. Sketches of the two Hispanic women were released nationwide. Tips flooded in, hundreds of sightings. None confirmed. Then came the DNA. A small sample was recovered from her clothing. A piece of male DNA. But it didn't belong to her husband, and it didn't match anyone in the national database either. Still, the investigation pressed on. Every piece of evidence seemed to lead nowhere. Every tip was a dead end. Yet, Keith remained loyal. He stood by her side in every interview, calling her the strongest woman I've ever known. Sherri, meanwhile, stayed quiet. She didn't appear on talk shows. She avoided most public appearances. Her family said she was healing, traumatized, trying to recover, but privately, detectives were growing frustrated. There were no ransom calls, no leads, no suspects, and that single piece of DNA, that one strange out-of-place clue, would soon blow the entire case open. For the next few years, the case faded in and out of headlines. No arrests, no answers, just a mystery that refused to die. Until 2020, when technology caught up. New DNA analysis tools uncovered something investigators had never expected. The unknown male DNA didn't belong to a stranger. It belonged to someone from Sherri's past. Someone she hadn't spoken to in years. And that discovery would unravel everything. The fairy tale image. The sympathy. The miracle story. Because the woman who had once been America's symbol of survival was about to become its greatest deceiver. 4 months after Sherri's miraculous return, police worked tirelessly. But every clue led to nowhere. The supposed kidnappers, 2 Hispanic women, seemed to have vanished into thin air. No camera footage. No witnesses. No trace of the vehicle she described. The FBI took over, determined to crack the mystery that had captured the entire nation. It began with the DNA. That one tiny piece of male DNA recovered from Sherri's clothing. Something investigators couldn't ignore. It didn't match her husband, Keith, and it didn't match anyone in the national database. So they expanded the search. State to state, year by year. And while they waited, the case went cold. Sherri tried to rebuild her life. Publicly, she was still the miracle mom, smiling softly in photos, staying quiet, thanking her supporters. But privately, she was avoiding interviews and police follow-ups. Every time investigators tried to revisit her story, something about it changed. She couldn't remember details she once swore by. She confused times, distances, and descriptions. And the FBI noticed. Agents began to suspect that her story, the brutal abduction, the mysterious women, might not be real. But they couldn't prove it. Not yet. Then, in 2020, 4 years after her disappearance, a break. The DNA sample finally got a match, not through a criminal record, but through familial DNA tracing. The FBI contacted a man living out of state. He wasn't a suspect, but his genetic profile was close enough to suggest a family connection to the mystery man. When they interviewed him, his reaction stopped them cold. He said, "That DNA might be my cousin." And when the agents showed him a photo of Sherri Papini, he froze. Wait, I know her. The cousin, Sherri's ex-boyfriend. Investigators tracked him down. He was quiet, polite, nervous. He hadn't been in trouble before. When the FBI sat him down, he sighed and said, "I knew this day was coming." He told them everything. Sherri hadn't been kidnapped. She had called him out of the blue in 2016, crying, saying she needed to get away from her husband and escape her life. She begged him to come pick her up. He agreed, thinking he was helping her through a personal crisis. He drove hundreds of miles to meet her, and for the next 3 weeks, she stayed with him in his apartment. He said she never looked scared, never acted like a hostage. She watched TV, used her phone, and even went jogging around the neighborhood. When the FBI asked why she looked beaten and branded in the photos, he shook his head. She did that to herself. She cut her hair, she bruised her body, and she burned herself with a hot tool to make it look real. Then one morning, she told him she wanted to go home. He drove her hundreds of miles back toward California and dropped her off along a highway. She told him exactly what to say if police ever asked. Then she walked into the cold dawn. Ready to play the role of America's miracle mom? The confession shocked investigators. Everything. Every tearful interview, every nationwide manhunt had been built on a lie. Still, the FBI didn't want to rush in without evidence. They spent months re-examining the timeline, Sherri's phone data, and every statement she'd made. Her cell tower records lined up exactly with the ex-boyfriend's story. Her injuries matched self-inflicted patterns, and her text history revealed constant communication with him before her abduction. By the time the truth came together, the FBI had spent years chasing ghosts, and the woman they thought was a survivor was actually the mastermind. In 2022, they decided it was time. Agents knocked on Sherri's door. When she opened it, she smiled, thinking it was another check-in. Instead, they told her she was under arrest. The woman who once symbolized hope, motherhood, and strength was now facing federal charges for lying to investigators and committing mail fraud. But even then, she didn't admit the truth. Not until she sat in the interrogation room. Cameras rolling, a Hinst silent, and her entire world finally collapsed. The interrogation room is cold. White walls, a metal chair, a paper cup of water sitting untouched on the table. Across from her sits the FBI agent who spent years chasing her story. And now, finally, the truth. Sherri Papini looks exhausted, but she still has that same soft smile she wore when she thanked America for finding her. The same eyes that cried on camera, now dot around, searching for an escape. The agent starts slow. He doesn't accuse. Not yet. He just asks her to go over the story one more time. The jog, the SUV, the two masked women, the chains, the branding. Sherri repeats everything, word for word. Her voice doesn't shake. She's done this 100 times. But then the agent slides a photo across the table, a man's face. And suddenly, the air in the room changes. The agent speaks quietly. "We know where you were, Sherri. We know who you were with." He shows her the DNA results, the phone records, the rental car receipt. Each piece of evidence lands like a hammer. She stares at them in silence. Ten looks up, her lip trembling. "That's not possible," she whispers. "You don't understand. I was taken." But the agent doesn't respond. He just leans back, arms crossed. On the screen beside them, security footage plays not of kidnappers, not of a van, but of Sherri and her ex walking into a store, buying food, smiling. The facade begins to crack. Minutes turn to hours. She cries, shouts, pleads. Every excuse collapses under the evidence. Finally, the agent says, "Sherri, this isn't about punishment anymore. This is about the truth. Tell us why." There's a long pause. The room is silent, except for her shaky breathing. Then, she whispers, "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." Her voice cracks. Tears fall. I wanted to go home." That's when the story everyone believed, the miracle, the heroism, the survival, shattered completely. She admits that she faked everything. The bruises, the branding, the starvation. She tells them she wanted to escape her life, that she felt trapped in her marriage, trapped as a mother, trapped in her own image of perfection. So she ran away. And when the world began searching for her, she panicked. She realized there was no way back unless she became the victim. So she turned her escape into a story, a kidnapping that never happened, a trauma that never existed, a lie that captured an entire country's heart. When the FBI confronted her husband, Keith, He couldn't even speak. For years, he had cried for her, defended her, believed her. He raised their children alone, living every day in the shadow of her pain. And now, he was realizing it had all been a performance. In court documents later, he wrote, "She made fools of us all. But the worst part, she made me believe she was dead." The case became one of the most bizarre and heartbreaking hoaxes in modern American history. The supermom who inspired the world was actually the architect of her own nightmare. The damage she left behind wasn't physical. It was emotional. A husband betrayed, children who grew up under a lie, and a nation forced to question every story that once inspired hope. When agents finally walked her out of the interrogation room, cameras captured her blank stare. No tears this time. No trembling hands. Just silence. She had spent years living a lie, and for the first time, the truth was louder than her words. Outside the FBI field office, reporters shouted questions. Why did you do it? Were you trying to hurt your husband? Do you regret it? She didn't answer, but one question, whispered by a reporter, seemed to echo in the air. Did you ever really want to come home? Or just to be found? The courtroom is silent. Dozens of eyes are fixed on one woman. Her blonde hair tied neatly, her hands folded, her expression calm but hollow. Sherri Papini walks in like she's attending a PTA meeting, not a federal sentencing. But behind her, the walls are lined with reporters, victims' advocates, and FBI agents who spent years chasing her lie. The judge reads the charges aloud. Mail fraud. False statements to federal agents. 2 words echo louder than the rest. Betrayal and deception. For most people, this wasn't just a crime. It was a collective heartbreak. She didn't just lie to her husband or her town. She lied to an entire country that prayed for her. Keith Papini sits in the front row, jaw tight, hands clenched. The same man who once begged for his wife as safe return is now staring at the woman who destroyed his life. He had believed her story for years, defended her against doubt, raised their kids through whispers and headlines, and when the truth came out, he said it felt like losing her all over again. He looks down at the letter he's written to the court, trembling slightly before standing to read it aloud. She showed no concern for the trauma she caused our children. She watched as strangers searched the woods for her, as I begged for help, as our family suffered. Every tear she cried on TV, it was all a performance. There's silence in the room. Even Sherri doesn't look up. Prosecutors describe how she fabricated evidence, used GoFundMe donations, and wasted federal resources. Thousands of hours spent by law enforcement, all chasing a story she invented. One agent calls it one of the most elaborate hoaxes I've ever seen. Another says quietly, "When we found her, we tooved. We desaved someone. We didn't realize we were saving a lie." Then, the judge turns to Sherri. He asks if she wants to speak. For a long moment, she says nothing. Then she stands, her voice trembling, soft, almost rehearsed. "I am so sorry for the pain I caused. I'm ashamed of my actions. I wish I could take it all back. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted to come home." The words hang in the air. They sound familiar, almost identical to what she said in that FBI room. Keith exhales sharply, shaking his head. The prosecutor doesn't even look at her. Finally, the gavel falls. 18 months in prison. 3 years of supervised release. More than $300,000 in restitution to government agencies and victims. It is not the harshest sentence, but it is a sentence the world will never forget. The woman once hailed as a miracle survivor is now a convicted fraud. As she's led away in handcuffs, the flash of cameras blinds the hallway. Reporters shout questions, but she keeps her head down. For the first time in years, Sherri Papini has no story to tell. Outside, the crowd disperses. Keith leaves quietly through a side door, refusing interviews. He has said he has focused only on protecting his children, helping them understand that their mother's story was indeed real. In one interview later, he said, "I don't think the world realizes how deep her lie went. She didn't just fake being kidnapped, she faked who she was." And see the priest and Sherri quickly fades from the headlines. But her case leaves behind a trail of questions that true crime fans investigators and psychologists still debate today. What drives someone to invent pain? What kind of desperation pushes a person to become the victim of their own story? And how far will someone go to make the world care? When she's released in 2024, she returns to California. Quietly, no cameras, no interviews, no public apology. But the internet doesn't forget. Every article, every headline, every reaction video lives on. Her name becomes a cautionary tale, a modern legend of lies and sympathy. T-woman who fooled everyone didn't just vanish once. She vanished twice, first into her own lie, and later into history. It's a memory of Italiano. The final image is haunting. A mother, smiling in family photos. A victim, crying on national TV. A fraud, standing in a courtroom. Three faces of the same person, all masks of the truth she destroyed. As the gavel's echo fades, a narrator's final words linger. In the end, she got what she wanted. The world's attention, but she lost everything that was real. The story of Sherri Papini doesn't end with a prison sentence. It lingers like an echo of disbelief that refuses to fade. Because this wasn't just the story of a missing mom. It was the story of a country that wanted to believe in a miracle. For 22 days, she had America on its knees, praying, donating, hoping. Her face was on every screen, her story told in every home. She was everyone's daughter, sister, mother. But when the truth came out, it didn't just shatter her image, it cracked something deeper. Our collective trust in the stories we're told. Even years later, investigators still talk about her case in interviews. They call it a perfect storm of deception, emotional manipulation, media hysteria, and psychological complexity all rolled into one. Sherri didn't just fake a kidnapping. She built a performance so convincing that law enforcement, the media, and millions of strangers believed her. She gave herself bruises. She cut her hair. She starved herself. She branded her own skin, all to make a lie look real. That level of control, that obsession with image, is what makes her case one of the most disturbing modern hoaxes ever seen. Psychologists later described her as a pathological attention seeker, someone addicted to sympathy, the way others are addicted to drugs. She didn't crave money or revenge. She craved emotion. The gasps, the tears, the spotlight. It gave her something reality. Never could. Her former friends said she always needed to be the center of every story. In her mind, tragedy meant attention. And attention meant validation. It's a chilling thought that someone could fake suffering so well. The world actually suffered with them. But what about the real victims left behind? Keith, the man who loved her, believed her, and defended her, is still rebuilding his life. He's raising their 2 children quietly, away from cameras. Trying to explain that sometimes the people we trust most can lie the deepest, he told a reporter once. My kids don't know who to believe. Their mom told them, monsters took her away. I have to tell them the monster was her. Those words hit harder than any sentence a judge could deliver. And what about us? The audience. We clicked, we shared, we cried. We rooted for her survival. Then we watched in disbelief as it all unraveled. Sherri Papini became a symbol, not just of deceit, but of how quickly truth can be shaped, sold, and swallowed. Her case forced people to question what they believe online. How many other stories were half-truths dressed as tragedy? In an age where attention is currency, Sherri proved one terrifying thing. You can fake almost anything. Even pain. When she walked out of prison in 2024, she avoided cameras, ducked reporters, and disappeared back into anonymity. But the internet never forgets. Her name still trends every year near the anniversary of her disappearance, a ghost of a headline that refuses to die. People still search her story, still rewatch the old news clips. Some say they feel angry. Others, pity. A few even say they understand. Maybe that's the most haunting part, that her lie worked because people wanted to care. In the end, Sherri Papini's disappearance wasn't about being found. It was about being seen. She wanted to be the hero of her own tragedy. And for a time, she was. But when the cameras stopped rolling, when the sympathy dried up, When her lies turned to ashes, she was left with nothing but silence. No crowd. No cause. No sympathy left to steal. Just a woman staring back at her own reflection, realizing the person she pretended to be was gone, and maybe she was too. As the final images fade, her smiling family photos dissolve into mugshots. The hopeful search posters blur into court headlines, and her once perfect suburban home stands quiet, empty, forgotten. The narrator's final words echo over a cold piano note. She fooled the world and lost herself in the lie. Then the screen fades to black. On-screen text appears slowly. The woman who fooled everyone. Subscribe for more chilling true crime stories.